I'm an endurance runner. I enjoy endurance running, and I'm also somebody who tries to engage with the world around me. And in the UK, where I'm from, there's a very rich tradition, a very well-established tradition of using ambitious sporting endeavour as a way of raising money for good causes. The future of humanity could be safeguarded simply by everybody doing a little bit. You know, we are advancing as a species, but that progress does not have to be at the cost of somebody else. No matter how hard you think it is to organise an event like this, it is an order of magnitude harder than you can imagine. And their posts on social media go from, I'm running a marathon in Sierra Leone, please sponsor me, to I spent the day visiting street child projects, meeting the people for whom, whose lives are going to be transformed by the donations that you are giving. So they're posting, their pleas suddenly become invested with so much more in the way of sincerity and authenticity, and people's faces change. You see their emotions. You see real people. You see people who are not guarded. Nobody has ever regretted going for a run. Nobody has ever regretted for a run. It's only, it's such a cliche to say it, but it's the things that you don't do that you regret, not the things that you actually do.
Hello, Project Ultimate Lifers. We are here today with Josh. We have met here in Sierra Leone doing the Street Child Marathon. He has been here with Street Child from the start, and we're going to be talking today about his experiences, some of the challenges he's faced, and just his overall adventure running and participating with such an amazing organization like Street Child. So, Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your experiences. Who are you?
Okay, well, I don't think the background is terribly interesting, but I have been involved with Street Child since 2012. Street Child started in 2008, and once you have systems in place, once you have an idea, what you need to do is fund that idea. And back in 2012, a marathon seemed like a pretty good idea, a pretty good way to fund the whole organisation. And in the UK, where I'm from, there's a very rich tradition, a very well-established tradition of using ambitious sporting endeavour as a way of raising money for good causes. So Tom Dannett set up what is now the Sierra Leone Marathon, and I was one of the very first people to be recruited. And he asked me to recruit as many people as I possibly could from the running club in the UK, of which I was chairman. And for the first few years, I completely failed to recruit anybody else. But I did recruit myself a further 10 times after that first edition. So we've just run the 11th edition. It's a race that has been scuppered more than once by first an epidemic in the form of Ebola back in 2014, and then more recently by a pandemic. So we had a 3-year COVID-enforced hiatus. But other than that, we have had a good run. And I think if somebody had said to us all those years ago that we were going to have completed 11 Sierra Leone marathons by 2024, it would have been hard to swallow.
I like that you said you've had a good run.
You see what I did there?
Yes, I did. Excellent. Okay, so tell us more about your experiences. Why do you keep coming back?
Well, you'd think after all these years I'd have a pre-prepared, ready to deploy, oven-ready answer to that question. But I guess the answer changes depending on my frame of mind. I think first and foremost, I'm an endurance runner. I enjoy endurance running, and I'm also somebody who tries to engage with the world around me. And there's that, if you can imagine a Venn diagram, over here you have endurance running, and over here you have a bunch of people who are committed to making the world a better place, committed to leaving it in a better condition than the condition it was in when they found it. So I like to inhabit that intersection between the two. And the wonderful thing about inhabiting that intersection is that you get to meet, and I'm using these words mindfully. I'm about to launch into hyperbole, but very consciously. In that intersection, you meet the most fantastic people. So, as you yourself can confirm. We've just had a few days of engaging with, interacting with, rubbing shoulders with, running alongside the most wonderful people who have spent most of their lives in pursuit of exactly the experiences that we have had. They're all people who are eminently aware of the challenges facing humanity down the line, and believe me, they are legion, they are numerous. And I think each and every one of them has in their mind a determination, a willingness to do something about it in a very, very small way. But it doesn't require massive solutions. It doesn't require, juggernaut solutions. The future of humanity could be safeguarded simply by everybody doing a little bit. And the wonderful thing about this particular cause and numerous other causes is that, we're part of a non-zero sum game. I'm talking in a rather broad picture, but we are advancing as a species, but that progress does not have to be at the cost of somebody else. For our lives to improve, there is no requirement that it has to be at the expense of somebody else's life. So, I have a redistributive mindset. I like the idea of everybody helping everybody. I mean, that sounds ridiculously fluffy and nebulous and utopian, but I think you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's a few things that come to mind here, but first off, why running? You said that you were an endurance runner. Why?
Okay, well,
because if you were to say to somebody, hey, you want to go run 100 miles? They might think like you're absolutely out of your mind, and here you're running a marathon a week as if that would almost be nothing.
It's a lot harder to go from 0 to 5K than to go from 5K to 100K or 150K or even 200K. I think making running part of your life is the first challenge, but it is also the biggest challenge. Once you've done that, it's just a question of normalizing those distances. To somebody who doesn't run, 5K seems like a very long way. To somebody who runs a little bit, 10K seems like a very long way. But to somebody, I believe that we are made to move. And as Chris McDougall, author of Born to Run, will confirm, it's not that we stop running because we get old. We get old because we stop running. So, I'm very hopeful that if I continue to be active for as long as I possibly can, then
you're going to be a centennial running marathons.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it will be foolish to give up now. I mean, who knows how realistic that is, but that's not a reason not to try.
Absolutely.
I definitely intend to keep running well into my 70s and 80s.
Are there any habits or, strategies that you use to keep yourself in momentum? I feel like you describe basically the absolute analogy for life, where as long as you didn't say the word momentum, but you get a little bit of momentum and you kind of keep going.
Well, I think it's no secret that, if you reduce it, if you reduce running to simply keeping fit, for me it's a lot more than just keeping fit. There's something very meditative and restorative about running. But if you reduce it to just keeping fit, then being physically active and keeping fit is its own reward. You simply engage with life more keenly, more viscerally, if you do so within the confines of a healthy, well-maintained body.
Are there ever periods that you go through where you don't necessarily run, and does that have any kind of negative impact?
I don't think so. I think whatever the weather, whatever the temperature, dark, nighttime, blistering sunshine, I will always run. And I do so because life, as we all know, is not without its challenges. Mm-hmm. The dirty, grimy, grubby business of sitting at a desk and earning a living is arduous and unpleasant for many people. But as soon as I start running in the evening or in the morning, I can feel the stress dissipating from my shoulders. Just, Sunday when we did the marathon, we had literally 1,000 people running through the streets of Makeni, a smaller number than that doing the marathon. But having spent a good few days being tossed around in the back of a 4x4, it was so wonderful. It was such a relief to allow my muscles and my limbs to start doing what they are most comfortable doing. As soon as I felt that familiar rhythm pulsating through my body, I felt as though I was doing what I was designed to be doing.
Now you've been here as one of the longest members of the marathon. What were some of the things that you've seen or like challenges that have been experiences along the way, and how were those overcome?
In terms of organising the marathon?
In terms of anything.
Well, it's 2024. When we first came here back in 2012, Freetown was the only city in Sierra Leone that had anything vaguely resembling an operational power grid system. So Makeni was dark. It was plunged into darkness. So doing what we have done over the last few days without any kind of an operational power system was in and of itself a major challenge. Then, as you've experienced, just transporting huge numbers of people en masse through Sierra Leone it's not trivial. The roads are better now than they used to be, but they're still not perfect. Transport overland here invariably involves being tossed around in the back of a 4x4 for long periods of time. Back then, there were police checkpoints every 2 kilometers just after the Civil War. Then those checkpoints were reinstated during Ebola. So getting around is no mean feat. So that's a primary challenge. Catering to the needs of a very diverse selection of people who with differing expectations, keeping them happy, keeping them entertained, managing to strike a balance between giving them a good time, but also providing them with the opportunity to engage meaningfully with Street Child's projects. That's work. That involves planning and strategizing and thinking and pondering and reflecting. And as I said to all the runners the other night, no matter how hard you think it is to organize an event like this, it is an order of magnitude harder than you can imagine. So something like this, which on the face of it does not look like such a big deal, a bunch of people running through the jungle, it takes a year to organize it.
Mm-hmm. And so what are some of the challenges people face when running? I know this is not the average marathon, and I think anybody who's experienced it could say that. I did personally the duathlon, so I had both, biking experiences, many bikes along my journey, as well as the run, but the marathon itself, or any event really.
It's hot in Sierra Leone. I think the vast number of people we've attracted this year have been from Western Europe, which has a very forgiving, temperate, easy climate. But I don't think anything that you can do in the UK or in Germany or in the Netherlands can possibly prepare you for Sierra Leone temperature. I think it was 38 or 39 degrees on Sunday, and it's humid. And I'm not a physiologist, but I seem to remember somebody once telling me that it is far harder to extract, for your lungs to extract oxygen from hot air than it is from cold air. So the body has to work so much harder. And once your body temperature gets to a certain point, once your core temperature, once you're dehydrated and once you can't get oxygen, homeostasis stops working, so your body can no longer regulate its temperature. And that's when fun things like organ failure start happening. So I think it's not often that you find marathons with medics literally at every checkpoint, at every 5K checkpoint. So the climate on its own is a challenge, and we have a high dropout rate on this marathon. I think some years ago, Runner's World magazine decided they drew up a compendium of difficult marathons, and I don't know how they came up with this figure, but they decided it was the world's 9th hardest marathon. So I'm guessing that's primarily because of the terrain. It's a lot of it is arduous technical terrain. Some of it is tarmac, and that tarmac absorbs the heat, and the heat is sort of reverberates, and it is punishingly hot. And most experienced endurance runners, or most experienced marathon runners, would try and run a negative split, meaning that they go out slowly and then they speed up in the second half of the race. But the cruel irony with this race is that the longer you are out there, the longer you are going to be out there, because the temperature starts at around 26, 27 degrees early in the morning, and then it can peak at 39 degrees. So if you're still out there when the sun is high in the sky, that sun is going to bake you into the ochre trail, and leave you completely dehydrated and suffering. And we saw a fair number of those people. But as our race director would say, that marathon is just one tiny component of the overall street child experience. As he would say, it's the victory lap, your lap of honor. The most important part of the week is engaging with street child projects. And then, it's quite perverse in a way. All these people have paid some money, a lot of money, and they have undertaken to come out and deliberately suffer. So there's something faintly paradoxical about that. So, you might say that they're doing that in solidarity with the people for whom they're raising money.
Okay, so somebody who's listening to this might be like, oh my gosh, why would anybody want to do that? But what are some of the benefits or growth that can kind of come as a result of putting yourself through something like this?
I think there's a lot to be said for embracing adversity, making friends with pain, normalizing discomfort, and then triumphing over it. I think nowadays people talk about type 2 fun. It's fun that is not necessarily fun whilst you're doing it, but I've been sweeping this race for 12 years, and one of my favorite experiences during the year is seeing the look of utter misery and frustration and pain and discomfort on the faces of people in the final kilometre of the race, and knowing that pain, that suffering, so visible on their faces, is going to transform beautifully into beaming smiles and exuberance and elation. That is truly wonderful for me. It's not necessarily that I derive pleasure from other people's suffering.
It's not what it sounds like.
I know that they can make it, and it is always the case that I have more faith, more confidence in other people's ability to get round the course than they have in themselves.
I almost feel like those were your exact words to me the
well,
night before.
I was with two incredibly brave and tenacious women on Sunday, and time and again I heard them say, I don't think I can make it. But there was no doubt in my mind. I think if you start something like that, obviously these are multifactorial equations. Things happen. The unexpected can happen. But if you get to the start line, then more often than not, people get to the finish line.
I think it's one of those things where, the pain and pleasure balance.
Yeah.
Right? So something that is so massively painful, then the results of that at the end of the experience is a massive amount of pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. And they're all walking around. Well, they're stumbling around, they're hobbling around, but they're proud of themselves. They feel great, and that feeling of triumph and personal achievement is going to sustain them for weeks, months to come.
In what way can this be an analogy for life? How would you frame that? Life
is about suffering. We are all born into suffering. We are cold. We need to keep warm. We're born. We need to shelter. We need to feed ourselves. Every single one of these requirements that we meet, those are requirements that we meet in order to stave off suffering. And I think turning the suffering of long distance running into a sort of a springboard towards overcoming that suffering, I think that's incredibly positive. I think it makes people more resilient. I think it makes people better equipped to deal with what life has to throw at them.
How would you define resilience?
Maybe confidence in oneself, knowing that no matter how difficult things are, it is time-limited difficulty, it is time-limited suffering that will end and that will give way to something else. And maybe the more intense that suffering, as he just says, the more intense the suffering, the sweeter the joy afterwards.
After all these years, do you have any moments that just stand out as like your favorite moments?
In the race?
Or just in general, like with the whole experience. This isn't just about the race, right? This is about
Absolutely.
The fundraising, the race, the experience.
I think it's always a pleasure to see how people's relationship with the NGO change during the course of the week that they spend with us. When they're fundraising in the US or in Europe, they're fundraising for something that's extremely abstract. So, in a way, we're asking them to do something that's not terribly authentic. The plights of the children for whom we are raising money, they're not rooted in anything that is real to them. We all know that the world is full of, is an unequal place in which to live. But it isn't until they come over and they see the schools that Street Child is building, that they visit the projects that Street Child is funding, that it becomes something relatable, something palpable, something that they can genuinely get behind. And their posts on social media go from, I'm running a marathon in Sierra Leone, please sponsor me, to I spent the day visiting Street Child projects, meeting the people for whom, whose lives are going to be transformed by the donations that you are giving. So they're posting, their pleas suddenly become invested with so much more in the way of sincerity and authenticity, and people's faces change. You see their emotions. You see real people. You see people who are not guarded. They're not self-managing so much. They are experiencing Sierra Leone, and they are experiencing firsthand what Street Child is doing to keep, to use Tom's byline, to keep children safe in school and learning.
Why do you think it's so important for people to donate to such a cause?
To Street Child specifically? First of all, I'd like to remind you of what I said earlier. The progress of humanity does not have to be a zero-sum game. Everybody is better off when everybody else is better off. The challenges facing us around the corner, climate change, demographic change, how are we going to feed ourselves in 40 years' time, water stress. I think 40% of the world's population is going to be exposed to hydrological water stress in 2 or 3 generations' time. We can't solve those problems unless we work together as an international community. To me, that seems absolutely obvious. But I mean, there's an ethical dimension to this as well. Any country's most precious natural resources is not, you've seen the soil here. You drop something on the ground and it grows, and you dig a little deeper and you'll find minerals in the soil. You'll find diamonds, you'll find gold, you'll find bauxite, rutile, iron ore. Sierra Leone is an extremely rich country, but none of that is worth anything if the people who are supposedly going to be spearheading Sierra Leone's economic recovery in 2 or 3 generations' time can't add up or take away or read. So any country's most precious natural resource is not all those things, it's its children. So I think a lot of people are just not comfortable knowing that the world is comprised of an insouciant elite living in relative affluence, whilst there are, there's what Tom refers to as the bottom billion. I don't know exactly how many, but there are, something like 250 million children across the world are not in school and don't know how to read, don't know how to add up. They're not equipped for the future. And unless we do something, unless we enable other people to assume responsibility for doing something, then that cycle of poverty will endure. We will not break that cycle of poverty.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow, that's really powerful when put that way. If you were speaking to somebody and they were on the edge of wanting to say, sign up for a challenge like this, because I know Street Child's going to be doing other experiences. They're going to have, I hear something in September in Everest, to the Everest Base Camp. Are there other experiences?
Street Child now operates in 25 countries. Sierra Leone is the spiritual birthplace of the charity. But the model that we see here has now been tweaked and honed and scaled up and deployed to 25 countries worldwide, including, most recently, Ukraine. Obviously, each country has its own specific features, its own unique challenges, but by and large, the model is the same. So the whole point is not to deploy expensive hardware solutions to these countries. It's to look for local organizations, partner with those local organizations, so you're leveraging existing expertise. And that brings with it numerous benefits, chief amongst them being you're utilizing indigenous technologies, indigenous practices, so the whole thing becomes more sustainable. So your question was,
my question is, my question, okay, go ahead with what you're saying.
So there will be, it's the best way to get people to come and engage with these countries is to put on events in them. So do exactly what we've done in Sierra Leone, take people to these projects and give them a marathon to do along the way or just after. So yeah, it's only a matter of time.
So what would you say to somebody who is on the edge of wanting to do something like this? How would you encourage them, nudge them forward?
It's a no-brainer. We've just said goodbye to a whole bunch of people who are going home to their home countries. They're sitting on a bus as we speak, and those people are sweaty and they're tired and they're sunburnt and their legs hurt.
They've probably
been sick. And they're bitten, and they're probably going to be sick if they haven't already been sick. But once they get back, they will sit down, they'll look around them, they'll look at their coffee machine and their DVD player and their computer, and they'll close their eyes and they'll think about what they've just done, about the money they've raised, about the experience they've just had, about the personal challenge that they have taken on, and not one of them, I can guarantee, not a single one of them will say, I wish I hadn't done that. Well, just as a coda to that, nobody has ever regretted going for a run. Nobody has ever regretted for a run. It's only, I mean, it's such a cliche to say it, but it's the things that you don't do that you regret, not the things that you actually do. So if people are on the precipice, if they're teetering between signing up and not signing up, there are more reasons to sign up than not to sign up.
Right, absolutely. Now, I'm starting a tradition on this show where imagine you are at the beginning of your journey, right? Because life is just one big journey. And while there have been people of all different ages here from, the vast of the different generations, if you were talking specifically to somebody who is 16, 17, 18, 19, in their youth at college years, what would be 3 lessons you could share with them to be able to help them be able to be better architects for their life, to be more conscious in terms of preparing, planning, designing, and then executing on whatever plan, including things like adventure or etc.?
I wish you'd given me warning of this. Assume responsibility for your life. That sounds, again, that's nebulous and wishy-washy, but there is something concrete in there if you think about it. Don't just drift. Be the captain of your own ship. I'd say that's the first thing. The second thing, don't spend too much time in your comfort zone. We all need to be in our comfort zone every now and then, but I think growth comes from spending as much time as you can possibly stomach outside of it. And the third thing, engage with the world around you. I think we all learn. We learn, full stop. We learn the most, and we learn all the time when we take a step towards other people.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think you've covered it, Jess. It's been a privilege meeting you.
It's been such a privilege meeting you. Thank you very much. And next time, until next time, and for us, there will be a next time.
I hope so.
Okay, great.